when the bulldozer's engine roared to life and started ripping apart my rain garden. A handful of neighbors actually stood on the sidewalk and clapped. The HOA board members lingered nearby, arms crossed, smirking like they'd just cured cancer. And deep beneath us all, the hill itself shifted. That's right, that was me you felt. You're probably wondering how I ended up standing in my pajamas, watching my entire front yard get shredded, like classified documents in a panic. Let me take you back to the beginning. When I bought my house on Crestwood Ridge, I wanted quiet, a little piece of wilderness, and a view that made the mortgage feel worth it. My lot sat on a steep hillside overlooking the valley. Stunning, yes, but also a slope that could turn into a mudslide with the right or wrong amount of rain. The realtor waved it off, said the original builders had taken care of drainage. I'd spent enough years hiking soggy trails and growing native plants to know that was nonsense. So I did something the HOA rulebook had never imagined. I built a rain garden. No concrete retaining walls, no tacky fountain, just a thoughtfully engineered system of deep-rooted native plants, gentle berms, and shallow swales that slowed stormwater and let it soak in instead of carving canyons down the hill. I poured months of weekends and sweat into that garden. It wasn't just pretty, it worked. After every downpour, water wandered calmly through the plants and disappeared into the soil instead of racing downhill like it was late for an appointment. For a while the HOA said nothing. Crestwood Meadows prized its uniform sea of chemical green turf and identical boxwood hedges. I kept the street-facing part of the yard mowed and tidy, hoping they'd leave the slope side alone. Spoiler, they didn't. It started small. A neighbor muttering about unkempt properties while we all checked our mailboxes. A glossy newsletter photo spread of perfect lawns with a sidebar about protecting property values. Then came the typed notes folded in half and taped to my front door. Landscaping inconsistencies. I answered the only way a reasonable person would. I made laminated signs explaining pollinator habitat and native plants for erosion control, added neat wooden plant labels, and even built a cheerful little website with photos, diagrams, and a QR code on a stake. Didn't help. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived citing actual code violations. The HOA handbook didn't even mention rain gardens, but facts have never stopped a determined bureaucrat. Next came the royal visit. Veronica Langston, HOA president, platinum blonde helmet hair, pastel blouse pressed to a knife edge. She arrived unannounced and delivered a 10-minute lecture on visual harmony and her personal fear of snakes and rodents. I walked her through the hydrology and soil science. She replied, "Rules are rules," spun on her heel, and marched away like she'd just sentenced me to hard labor. After that it was weekly citations, plants too tall, rocks without prior approval, invasive species. Every single one was native. She was just making things up at that point. Then came the ambush. While I was pulling overtime on a deadline, the board called a special emergency meeting. No public notice, no agenda, just Veronica and her inner circle. They voted to restore my property to community standards. By the time I got home Monday evening, it was done. Bulldozer tracks crisscrossed the hill. My garden gone. Young oak trees dangled by exposed roots. The berms I'd shaped by hand were gouged into raw trenches. My signs were splintered under the treads. And there, flapping on my front door, was a $500 invoice for restoration services billed to me. That was the moment I stopped trying to reason with them. Then the rains came. First a mist, then steady drizzle, then 3 straight days of monsoon. My yard, once a sponge, had become a luge run. Water poured straight down the bare slope with nothing to slow it. By day 3, sidewalks were cracking, wooden fences tilted like drunks, and mud oozed across once immaculate lawns. I walked the neighborhood like a disaster tourist, photographing every new scar. I called Greg Foster, an old friend from college, who's now a geotechnical engineer. He came out, drove soil probes, took samples, and after a few hours looked at me grimly. "You were sitting on a loaded gun," he said. "That rain garden was the only thing keeping this hillside stable." He sketched diagrams showing how water was now trapped between clay layers, building pressure like a shaken soda can. I compiled everything, timestamped photos, videos, Greg's full report, and sent it to the HOA board by certified mail, email, and posted copies on the community bulletin board. Veronica's response? At the next monthly meeting, she took the microphone and literally laughed, calling it alarmist nonsense from someone who refuses to embrace community values. 3 nights later, the Hill answered for me. At 2:03 a.m., I woke to a sound like a shotgun blast underground. I threw on shoes, grabbed a flashlight, and ran outside. The massive retaining wall behind Veronica's mansion had split clean in half. Half the wall, along with tons of mud, stone, and her custom cedar fencing, avalanched into the Jacksons' yard below. I watched their patio set bob past like raft debris. Veronica stood on her upper deck in a silk robe, screaming into her phone, makeup streaking down her face in the rain. The slide didn't stop there. Over the next 10 days, cracks raced across foundations. Doors refused to close. Entire lawns slumped downhill. Veronica's own house took the worst of it. Her brand-new kitchen addition developed a 6-inch fracture straight through the support wall. Then the insurance letters arrived. Claims denied. Reason: the landslide was man-made, caused by the unpermitted removal of a functional erosion control. Every affected homeowner was on the hook personally. I sued. Property destruction, gross negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, and cherry on top, the bulldozing contractor was owned by Veronica's first cousin. No competitive bids, no permits, just a quick cash grab, and a favor to shut up the dirt hippie. Discovery was glorious. We unearthed emails of Veronica calling me a filthy granola terrorist, board minutes admitting they ignored multiple warnings, because aesthetics matter more than dirt. The judge was not amused. We won $1.2 million in damages plus legal fees. Because the HOA itself was a defendant, they had to levy a special assessment on every single house in Crestwood Meadows to pay it. People who had clapped while my garden died now got 5-figure bills in the mail. Veronica resigned in disgrace the next day. Half the board followed within a week. Her mansion sat on the market for 14 months, foundation still cracked, lawn swallowed by dandelions and volunteer maples. I rebuilt the rain garden, bigger, better, with proper terracing and even deeper-rooted trees. At the very top of the slope, I installed a small granite plaque that reads, "Stabilizing your homes since 2025. You're welcome." These days, the new HOA hands out brochures encouraging native landscaping. They host erosion control workshops. Kids chase monarchs through yards that used to be sterile turf. The Hill is healing, and honestly, so am I. If you've ever gone to war with an HOA, or watched petty tyrants destroy something that actually worked, drop your story below. Is perfect uniformity really worth it when the ground itself decides to fight back? Let's talk.